Good morning, class. Today we're going to learn about completing the square, which is another way that we're going to learn how to solve a quadratic equation. We're going to start with an equation that we've seen before and that we know factors relatively easily. Okay, still factoring would be the best way to do that, but we're going to use this equation as a way to practice completing the square. What you want to do first is you want to remove the c term to the other side. So we're going to subtract 8 from both sides. When we do that, we're going to leave a hole where the 8 used to be. Then what you're going to do is you're going to look at this negative 6 and you're going to take half of that. So divide that by 2, take the b term and divide by 2, and that's going to be negative 3. And then what we need to do is we need to add that squared to both sides. Now when we square negative 3, we actually get 9. So we're adding 9 to both sides. The reason we're doing that is because we want to make this right-hand side a perfect square trinomial. And if you remember, when we squared a binomial, the middle term was always twice the product. So that's kind of what we're doing right here. So this, if I rewrite is x squared minus 6x plus 9 equals 1. Now we can factor that into x minus 3 quantities squared. From there, what we're going to do is we're going to take the square root of both sides. We've talked about that a lot of times people forget to do this. X minus 3 equals plus or minus 1. Then we're going to add 3 to both sides. Plus or minus 1. So our answer is 4 or 2. When we talk about answers to these problems, remember the answers, the solutions are the x-intercepts, or real roots, where it crosses the x-axis. So to summarize the completing the square, what you want to do to the c term is you want to move that to the other side. You want to take the middle term, the b term, divide by 2, square it, add it to both sides, factor, and go from there. The one thing that I didn't mention in this problem is that if there is a number in front of the a of the square term, which is the a, you have to divide through by that before you do anything else. Okay? Okay, so next we're going to try, again, another one that we'll eventually figure out does factor. But again, this is a good one to practice because when the b term is not even, it gets a little bit harder, but it's still doable. So the first step is we add 18 to both sides. We keep that hole there. We take negative 3, we divide it by 2. And we square it, and we add it to both sides. Now at first glance here, the right-hand side looks very difficult. And just to put out on the left side, the nice thing is about the factoring of this, all you do is write down x and then take this term and write it in, and it's fairly straightforward. The stuff on the right will normally work out not in a not too difficult fashion. You get a common denominator, which is going to be 4. 4 times 18 is 72, plus 9 is 81. And then you're going to recognize the two numbers on the right-hand side as perfect squares. Doesn't always happen, but in this case, because we know it factors, it's going to. So x minus 3 halves equals plus or minus 9 halves. You add 3 halves to both sides. 3 plus or minus 9 over 2, which equals 6 or negative 3. The next example we're going to try is one where there is a coefficient in front of the x squared term, so we're going to have to divide through by that. Okay, so some of the key features: take half of this, square it, put it here, and add it to both sides, and then factor, and then go from there. Okay, so what we do here is the first step: if there's an a term that's not equal to 1, you divide through by that. So once we divide through everything, it's going to be x squared plus 5/8x plus 1/5. Next, you have to remove the 1/5 to the other side, so we subtract 1/5 from both sides. When we do that, what you have is, so you have an opening here, and then you take half of 8/5, which is actually 4/5, and you square it, and you add it to both sides. You see I kind of cut out a step in there, the middle step in there. We want to subtract the 1/5 over. That's why this is a negative 1/5. Then we know how to factor x squared plus 8/5 x plus 16/25. It's just going to be x plus 4/5. We can show that. Then over here, again, it looks a little awkward. Get a common denominator, which is going to be 25, and then you're going to get positive 11 over 25. You take the square root of both sides. Remember, we are careful to remember to put in the plus or minus, and then we subtract the 4/5. Now this is where the calculator is going to come in, because there are two answers. Well, your answers are -4 plus or minus root 11 over 5. They'll ask you to put it in simplest radical form, and then they'll say use your calculator to find it to the nearest tenth. So what you're going to do is put that into your calculator. Remember to divide by 5, and that's me using the calculator to figure that out as well. You will need both answers. Be comfortable with both ways to approach that. So again, if you have a squared term, an a term that's greater than 1 or different than 1, you want to divide. You have to divide through by that. You're forcing the left-hand side into a perfect square trinomial, which is why this eventually comes down to x plus 4/5. Have a good day.